I have drawn pictures for which my own experience, or what I heard from others in my youth, have supplied the materials. Of course, they cannot be universally applicable. Such details varied in various circles, and were changed very gradually. Nor can I pretend to tell how much of what I have said is descriptive of the family life at Steventon in Jane Austen's youth. I am sure that the ladies there had nothing to do with the mysteries of the stew pot or the preserving pan, but it is probable that their way of life differed a little from ours, and would have appeared to us more homely. It may be that useful articles which would not now be produced in drawing rooms were hemmed and marked and darned in the old-fashioned parlour. But all this concerned only the outer life. There was as much cultivation and refinement of mind as now, with probably more studied courtesy and ceremony of manner to visitors, while certainly in that family literary pursuits were not neglected. I remember to have heard of only two little things different from modern customs. One was that on hunting mornings the young men usually took their hasty breakfast in the kitchen. The young men would rise at an early hour, meet the hounds, and probably the custom began, if it did not end, when they were boys, for they hunted at an early age, in a scrambling sort of way, upon any pony or donkey that they could procure, or in default of such luxuries, on foot. I have been told that Sir Francis Austen, when 7 years old, bought on his own account, it must be supposed with his father's permission, a pony for £1.50, and after riding him with great success for 2 seasons, sold him for £1 more. One may wonder how the child could have so much money and how the animal could have been obtained for so little. The same authority informs me that his first cloth suit was made from a scarlet habit, which, according to the fashion of the times, had been his mother's usual morning dress. If all this is true, the future admiral of the British fleet must have cut a conspicuous figure in the hunting field. The other peculiarity was that when the roads were dirty, the sisters took long walks in patens. This defence against wet and dirt is now seldom seen. The few that remain are banished from good society and employed only in menial work. But 150 years ago they were celebrated in poetry and considered so clever a contrivance that Gay, in his Trivia, ascribes the invention to a god stimulated by his passion for a mortal damson, and derives the name pattern from Patty. The pattern now supports each frugal dame, which from the blue-eyed Patty takes the name. But mortal damsels have long ago discarded the clumsy implement. First it dropped its iron ring and became a clog. Afterwards it was fined down into the pliant galoche, lighter to wear and more effectual to protect, a no less manifest instance of gradual improvement than Cooper indicates when he traces through 80 lines of poetry his accomplished sofa back to the original 3-legged stool. As an illustration of the purposes which a pattern was intended to serve, I add the following epigram, written by Jane Austen's uncle, Mr. Leigh Perrott, on reading in a newspaper the marriage of Captain Foot to Miss Pattern. Through the rough paths of life, with a pattern your guard, may you safely and pleasantly jog. May the knot never slip, nor the ring press too hard, nor the foot find the pattern a clog. At the time when Jane Austen lived at Steventon, a work was carried on in the neighbouring cottages, which ought to be recorded, because it has long ceased to exist. Up to the beginning of the present century, poor women found profitable employment in spinning flax or wool. This was a much better occupation for them than straw plaiting, inasmuch as it was carried on at the family hearth, and it did not admit of gadding and gossiping about the village. The implement used was a long, narrow machine of wood, raised on legs, furnished at one end with a large wheel and at the other with a spindle on which the flax or wool was loosely wrapped, connected together by a loop of string. One hand turned the wheel, while the other formed the thread. The outstretched arms, the advanced foot, the sway of the whole figure, backwards and forwards, produced picturesque attitudes and displayed whatever grace or beauty the workwoman might possess. Some ladies were fond of spinning, but they worked in a quieter manner, sitting at a neat little machine of varnished wood, like Tunbridge ware, generally turned by the foot, with a basin of water at hand to supply the moisture required for forming the thread, which the cottager took by a more direct and natural process from her own mouth. I remember 2 such elegant little wheels in our own family. It may be observed that this hand spinning is the most primitive of female accomplishments, and can be traced back to the earliest times. Ballad poetry and fairy tales are full of allusions to it. The term spinster still testifies to its having been the ordinary employment of the English young woman. It was the labour assigned to the ejected nuns by the rough earl, who said, "Go spin, ye jades, go spin." It was the employment at which Roman matrons and Grecian princesses presided amongst their handmaids. Heathen mythology celebrated it in the 3 fates, spinning and measuring out the thread of human life. Holy Scripture honours it in those wise-hearted women who did spin with their hands and brought that which they had spun for the construction of the tabernacle in the wilderness, and an old English proverb carries it still farther back to the time when Adam delved and Eve span. But at last this time-honoured domestic manufacture is quite extinct amongst us, crushed by the power of steam, overborne by a countless host of spinning jennies, and I can only just remember some of its last struggles for existence in the Steventon cottages.